everyone. I'm Elena Armijo, and I'm the founder of the C-Suite Collective. This is a company I created for executive leadership coaching and wellness that supports C-suite executives, entrepreneurs, and founders. Now, more than ever, businesses are running faster and with fewer resources. Burnout, overwhelm, disconnection, and disillusionment are the new norm for teams struggling with an old paradigm. At the C-Suite Collective, we believe deeply that providing massive support for your teams through executive coaching and holistic practices will create an inclusive culture, higher levels of performance, sustainable change, and the organizational impact you desire. You can find us at the c-suitecollective.com. What could simplicity provide you access to? We'll look at that in our coaching tip for the week. And in our interview segment today, we have Robyn Koenig, a small business consultant and an ICF credentialed certified professional coach. She specializes in helping small business owners run their business like they mean business. And she's spent the past 20 years cultivating her leadership experience across diverse roles in corporate, nonprofit, and freelance industries. I hope you enjoy the episode today, and remember, something powerful resides within you. I'm here to support you in seeing it and creating it. What could simplicity provide you access to? This is a question that I have been looking at roughly for the past 2 months as I've opened the C-Suite Collective, added new clients to my practice, moved to LA in the past 6 months, and really overall looked at my life through the lens of what could be possible if I simplify. Some of the ways I'm doing this are looking at my business on the whole at a very high level and saying, where can I have everything integrated, slowed down, and simple? I have a lot of judgments about simplifying because in my world in the past, that's meant that having it be simple may not mean that it's impactful or enough. And what I've really been sitting with in myself is letting go of perfection and control in order to have the experience of my life be about fullness and enjoyment. And one of the ways I do this is through simplicity. So I've looked at the ways that I'm making my conversations hard with Aaron in our partnership. Or the way that I'm even like, the other night I was thinking about going salsa dancing and I was making it so hard trying to decide which location I wanted to go to. Everything from how long will it take to get there? What's the vibe going to be like? How many people will be there? Am I really going to like it? Is it worth my time and energy to even get dressed to go out again? And what I noticed is that all of that drama in my head was really keeping me from the experience, which is all I wanted to do was take a minute and dance and enjoy some music. So choosing something from just choice and making it simple and trusting that whatever I choose is actually going to have me experience my life more fully. So the call to action for this week for you is look at 3 ways in your life that you can make it more simple than you're making it right now. You might look at your career, your relationship, and with yourself. Robyn, I'm so excited to have you here today. Thank you so much for taking the time to be a guest on this podcast. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm just super excited. I love this. This is such a fun time. So thank you for having me.
Yeah. Well, I think I'd just like to jump right in and ask you a little bit about your story. Will you share how you got here to being a coach and what the journey was like for you?
Sure. I don't know how long you have, but but you know what? It was one of those really unexpected opportunities in my life, which, is truly the story. I had worked in the corporate environment for a very long time. I was, 20 years in corporate. I led a nonprofit organization. I even worked freelance when I was first out of college. I worked in the movie industry. So I've done a lot of different things. And the one thing that I always absolutely loved to do was personal development, not only for myself, but just to help other people along the way. But I didn't realize it was the thing that I was going to get to do. And I went through 2 job layoffs, one when I was in my 30s, going through a divorce, big life changes happening with a small young child. And then again, a handful of years later. And what I realized was I didn't want anybody else to dictate what my opportunities could look like anymore. So I decided to just run the ship myself and start my own business. And that's essentially how I came to find coaching as a career, as an industry, and as something I really wanted to do with my life. So that's the Cliff Notes version.
That's beautiful. I have so many questions about this. I think my first question is, I think a lot of people that listen to this podcast think about making big leaps or big moves for themselves. And I can imagine at 30 and with a small little one, how scary it was to have to pivot. So, is there anything that you remember from that time period that really helped you through it?
Yeah, it is scary. I think the biggest maybe misconception is that people that do it, like, myself, to
Hmm.
go into, kind of start my own business and such, weren't afraid. And that's not true. It
Hmm.
really was scary. But it was just such an opportunity to step back and really think about what is it that I did want through the lens of what I didn't. And that's kind of how I framed it up for the second time, right? After going through this layoff, is I
Hmm.
honestly didn't know what I wanted to do. I struggled with that, this identity crisis. Who am I now without a title or a job and all of these pieces? And what I decided was to stop and then say, well, what don't I want? Like, what do I already know will not work for me? And use that as a way to rule things out. And that was kind of my first step, was just take things off the list. You know, what don't I want? And I
Hmm.
remember thinking, I know if I go back to, for me, it was the corporate world. I didn't want to go back into a corporate job. And that's not because it's bad, it just wasn't right for me. And I kept thinking, I'm going to poke my eye out with a fork if I go back to the kind of job that, really wasn't what I wanted. And so that was really the first step. And that's what I would love for people to understand, is it's okay to not know, but think about what you do know, which sometimes is these are not right for me, and start there.
Yeah, I love that because how many times are we asked, what do you want in the world, right? And sometimes when I was asked that question, I had no earthly idea on what I wanted to do, especially when my identity was wrapped up in my career as well, right? As a singer, not singing anymore was like starting from square one or zero, really. And I had no idea how to answer that question. So it would have been super helpful for me to say, have someone tell me, how about we start with a list of scratching off what you don't want? Because I
Yeah.
think that might have given me some more space. So it's a
Yeah.
beautiful tip.
It's a difficult
Yeah,
spot,
really.
right? Because again, we're asked that so many different parts of our life. What do you want to do when you grow up? You graduate high school or you're going into college and you have to pick a major. And then from there, it's, what kind of career do you want? And then after that, maybe you meet somebody and it's like, when are you going to get married? When are you going to have kids? Where do you want to live? It's all of these questions. And I think there's a lot of pressure to have it all
Mm-hmm.
figured out. And what's
Mm.
really fun, but also, again, super scary, is when something does change unexpectedly and you get to kind
Mm-hmm.
of say, well, now where do I want to go? And it's interesting because I didn't understand this at the time when I was, the single mom trying to kind of figure out my life and where I wanted to go next. Now I have 4 kids. I have a blended family. So, you know,
Beautiful.
these teenagers, honestly, like, to go through this journey of now having teenagers and helping them move into this next phase of their life, all these questions kind of start coming up and I hear myself asking them and I'm like, hold on, it's okay if they don't know, let them kind of take that
Mm.
step forward and see what happens. And then I remind myself to tell them, like, it's okay if this isn't your forever job or your forever career. Just start somewhere that you want to get started and go from there. So I've had to almost like apply that also in my parenting life and use that same, kind of mindset too.
Yeah, and I hear so much permission and allowance there. So what does that permission create between you and your kids? Or teenagers, I should
Well,
say.
it
They're
doesn't,
probably not kiddos
yeah,
anymore.
I know, it's insane. It doesn't always show up initially. I honestly have to work
Mm.
at it and remind myself, right? Like, as the mom, to coach myself through it because I get scared for them. I get a little nervous, like, oh my gosh, where are they going? What are they going to do? Are they going to be successful and, thrive on their own? But it sounds more like curiosity and excitement and support for them because it's their journey. And as much as I want them to, again, not fail, I also want them to know what it feels like to not have it all work out and know that that's okay too. And they're going to sort it out and figure it out on their own. So it's honestly kind of hard to be in that role and then coach myself through it. So sometimes I get the eye rolls and that happens. And then sometimes,
I think that means you're
does
normal.
help them.
Yeah. I don't know any mom who doesn't get the eye rolls anymore. Maybe that's a good metric for us. Are we getting the eye rolls?
Right.
That's beautiful. Well, so I know you work with a lot of small businesses. What do you love about working with small businesses?
I love working with small business owners because I am one. And that really helps me embrace the fact that what I experience, I can relate to, in a similar way, and not always exactly the same. But I love the fact that I've lived it. And also, I love that small business owners typically got started because they want to help somebody, right? And that was one of the biggest things that, I really share with every small business owner that I speak with is they probably started because they wanted to help somebody in some way, not because they wanted to start a business. That's usually not the precipice of like, I want to create a sole proprietorship and have all these things that I need to organize from a business perspective. That's usually just the thing that needs to come along the way, but they didn't start it because of that. And I remind them that that's the purpose. And also, it needs to live within a structure that's going to help them do that for the long term. And that's where I help them show up is you want to continue to help people in this way. We have to really work on the business because we want you to do that forever, as long as you want to do it. So that's why I actually love it, because I know where they're coming from and I want to help them do it for as long as they physically can.
And you mentioned structure, which is a really beautiful conversation, right? Because I know many of the clients I work with, some of them think they have structure. And is there anything that you notice as a coach around maybe their relationship to structure or what's, how do you create structure with them from the beginning?
I think I actually start with defining what that means to them. I love words. So if you work with me, I'll probably throw a lot of analogies in the mix, but I also really love to define words. And what usually happens is they bring up some kind of like an experience they've had of what structure kind of looks like from, maybe growing up or what their perception of it is. And I like to help them say, okay, well, what could that look like for you in a way that still makes it feel like you can be consistent with that, And so removing the judgment from it, removing, what they thought it is supposed to look like, and defining it for themselves. Because it could look very different person to person and business to business. So that's what I try and unravel first. Like, what does that actually mean to you? What's your definition?
Yeah, that's really beautiful. And I hear in that also a structure that works for you is something that is actually a living, breathing thing with you versus, that PowerPoint presentation that's on the back of your computer that you sometimes look at and, might refer to as you're growing your milestones in your business. So that's super cool. Do people resist structures, or do you find most people are on board for this conversation?
I think everybody resists structure sometimes. I think perhaps there's two kinds of people. I think there are people that resist it because they feel that it represents restriction, perhaps, that might show up. But I also think there's folks that thrive in it, that feel safe around structure. But I also use that as the opportunity to say, okay, well, are we leaning into that in the way that maybe the structure could be modified, but you feel very safe in it right now? but is it serving the business needs? And so again, it's really all about kind of like, I just like to unwind some things to then reform them in a way that a business owner feels good about, and understanding like what is it that they want to accomplish at the end of the day. And if they're leaning into this idea of structure, that it has to exist in a certain way because that's what they keep hearing, well, then I want to reduce those voices and say, but what is it that you're really trying to accomplish here? You know, and
Mm-hmm.
I remember myself coming out of, my coaching credentialing program and believing certain things that I had to do step by step because that's what everybody was doing in their way. And if I didn't do it, that maybe I wouldn't be successful in building my business. And so I'm all about experimenting, try it
Mm-hmm.
out, see what happens. And if it works, great. If it doesn't work, great. Then that is not the way to go. It's like the elimination process all over
Yeah.
again.
Right from what you said, yeah, at the beginning. It's such a great tie-in from what you're bringing from your past. What have you seen business owners, small business owners struggle with the most the past 2 years? And are there any trends you're seeing coming down the pike?
So a lot of the small business owners I work with are solopreneurs or have less than 10 employees. That's kind of my typical client, not exclusive, but pretty typical. And it's this belief that they have to do everything themselves. They have to solve every problem themselves. They have to figure it all out. And it's a
Mm-hmm.
feeling of isolation. And I definitely noticed that over the last couple of years of, obviously with physical connection kind of being restricted in so many ways, that isolation was even more prominent for a small
Mm-hmm.
business owner to feel like they just were kind of rolling solo.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that I really wanted to help them with was, first of all, being okay with the fact that maybe they were alone, like as far as how they ran the business, but that they didn't need to do it all by themselves. And that idea of overwhelm, cracking the code on that, because overwhelm is a feeling, but it's really not a thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's a feeling that we
Mm-hmm.
have due to like the multiple pressures or stressors that are showing up. And so I help them crack that code, almost kind of like organizing things a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
And and so it's looking at things like, what can you automate? What can you delegate? What can you remove, or delete?
Mm-hmm.
So it's like taking everything and kind of looking at like, what bucket does that go into now? That we can reduce this feeling of overwhelm and that you have to sort it all out in yourself. And then really prioritize and focus on the things that you're supposed to be doing, that you want to be doing, and handle all the rest in other areas.
Wow, I'm thinking about what you just shared, and I'm like, the pandemic and isolation must have been the perfect place for people to dig their heels in around doing it all alone too. So like as a business owner myself, I noticed like if I didn't force myself to go get more help, it would have been very easy in my four walls alone to convince myself that no, I actually can do this, right? And I don't know about you, but when the pandemic first started 2 years ago now, I instantly found myself back in old habits that I hadn't done for a very long time as a business owner. And I think the first like couple months, I found myself working 15-hour days. And I had no idea how that happened again, other than I just could. And I just kept going because there were no boundaries. There were there wasn't any of my usual routine that kept my boundaries in place. And I had to really readjust. And that was such a learning moment for me. So, did you experience any of that, or have you seen people experience any of that?
Yeah, well, I think also the environment, right? And
Yeah.
if you're going from, say, having an office where, you're essentially like starting your work day at a certain time and ending at a certain time when you go home. That doesn't happen for everybody, but it kind of helps you do that and draw that boundary because it's like an environmental boundary.
Hmm.
And so when all of a sudden, you're remote working and you're at home and you've got all these things going, you mix everything together. Your
Hmm.
time is kind of just a bunch of time until you probably go to sleep. and you're maybe doing the laundry and getting onto a call and helping kids with school, and all of these things just kind of got muddied. And so I think one of the things that I had to immediately address was those boundaries, you know, and being in a shared space with, husband and 4 kids and 2 dogs and everything else going on, was to define that and try your best to hold it. But if somebody walked in, and that's just kind of how things roll. But I understand what you're saying as far as this feeling of isolation. Like I don't have all the typical things that I might need at my disposal. If I'm here, how do I redefine that in a new way, in a new space, with a new schedule? And I think it came down to time management, putting things on the calendar and saying, this is my commitment to these things. And this is the structure, right, that I want to lean into and give myself. And know that, 15-hour day may not serve me for very long. At some point, you're just going to crash and probably wind up watching Netflix for more hours than.
Yep, to numb out and to not have to think anymore for the day. Yeah, that was a common approach. Well, what are some of the challenges that you're facing now in your own business as, an entrepreneur and a businesswoman? Like, what do you notice today that's challenging?
One of the things that I notice more often, and I think maybe it's coming up now more so because we're kind of moving into a whole new journey of businesses, many of them coming back to, thriving versus just surviving. And I find myself pushing to learn more, to have more resources, right? To almost kind of like get ahead of the game and be able to help them as they're running faster. Whereas before, I think myself as a coach and a consultant and, kind of where I'm at, felt like I had a lot to share. And then all of a sudden I was like, oh, I want to listen to this podcast or read this book and learn and, lean into this new study or whatever it is. And I had to take a moment to calm myself and be like, it's all good. If I want to learn that, great, but don't put that pressure on to say everybody needs new things. So I actually went back to some of my original training and the things that I loved, even back in, my corporate days, 20 years ago. What were some of the resources that helped me then that haven't changed? I don't have to recreate the wheel, and I don't have to find every shiny new resource or new book. Go back to the things that actually really helped me then and bring them out again. And that was really helpful because I kind of got a little wound up like, there's so much now new stuff to chase. And I was like, I can't keep up. So,
oh my gosh, happened. I had a very similar experience. As I'm looking at the 4 new books on my desk over here that I'm like, oh, I should really read, about the 48 laws of power, all the things that I think I need right now. But what I love about what you just said is that I wonder how many business owners are doing the same that we are, right? Where now that we're moving into thriving again instead of surviving, there's a feeling of being behind. And I don't know that I embody that every day, but it creeps up on me occasionally, especially the last 6 months as we've tried to move forward in the world with, whatever is happening now in terms of the hybrid environments and new ways of being with each other, even around our health. And something like as simple as handshakes has changed forever, I think, at this point, right? So it's really interesting to see how people react to that. And do you have any advice for people besides slowing down and going back into the trunk full of knowledge that you have? Because I'm the same way. I'm like, I must have over, 300 tools that I could pull out at any time that I just don't sometimes. So is there any other advice you'd have for those business owners?
Yeah, I think it's simple is not bad, like removing judgment around simplicity. And I agree with you as far as this perception of like, if a business maybe finally kind of got caught back up and they're back to thriving, that they need to show up with like everything new to keep the customers there. It's almost like a fear of the scarcity that could come back, and I'm noticing people, again, you get afraid of what could happen again when you've been through something negative. I used to be a dating coach. And so, I worked with a lot of people that were like, well, that relationship was terrible, so I'm just not going to date anymore. Or that type of person I'm so not into because that happened before, right? We use all of those things that have happened that we're afraid of or that kind of sucked, and we want to avoid them as much as possible. So what I have experienced from a business perspective is that, you know, this idea of simplicity can sometimes be judged as it's not enough. And yet it truly can be the absolute best thing for us. And I read something somewhere, and I'm not going to be able to quote it, but it referred to the idea of like, only apply a complex solution to something that really deserves that type of complexity, right? Like, think about, in some ways, if you're trying so hard to solve something and giving it complex solutions, is the problem worth that?
Is it worth it? Ooh. Like, what's the value of stressing over that, right?
Yeah, and just again, applying the brain power that it takes to solve something in such a complex way that maybe the simple approach is really all it needs. And that's good, right? Like, go with that. So,
Great advice. Well, I consider you a disruptor in the world because everybody I have on the show, I think, is disrupting the world in one way or another. And so I'd love to know what your hope for the future is.
like the future of the world or
Well, it could be the world, it could be your life, it could be the people around you, but really just any kind of hope that you're holding in your heart these days.
great question. Gosh. My hope is to be able to share as many stories as possible about, my personal experiences and things that I've been through in a way that somebody can just walk away with like one nugget, you know? Like I guess I look at my work and how I can impact people. I don't personally want to do it in a way that is like so much, right? Like I don't see myself out there in this gigantic way. I'm kind of like a one tip, one nugget at a time kind of person.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so my hope for the future is that just one thing, one thing that can land with somebody to help them take it away and then move the needle forward, one more step is kind of my approach. And I look at it that way too when it comes to my kids and my relationships, is to just consistently move things forward one little bit at a time. And if I can keep doing that for as long as possible, that would be success for me. So, it's a similar lens. I mean, I'm a huge advocate for personal wellness and fitness, and I apply that to the way that I train. And the older I get, how much harder it gets. And it's the same with business. The longer you're in business, the harder it gets. The older your kids get, it's kind of the harder it gets sometimes. I don't know. So just that little bit at a time, a little bit stronger, a little bit faster, a little bit more, you know, engaged, excited. That is my hope.
That sounds like a great way to lead people into the future is one step at a time. Yeah,
Just one.
beautiful. Well, anything else you'd like to share with everybody before we sign off?
You know what? It's honestly just so much fun to have conversation. I think we could probably do this forever. So,
We
you know,
could.
thank you for the opportunity to just get on here and have some conversation and, share a little bit about how I can help. And if there's a business owner out there that's thinking, yeah, this is really hard and this whole business thing I don't really love, but I love what I do. That's where I'm happy to have a conversation with anybody. And, you know, it's the little things that matter that I can help people with. And yeah, it's just such an opportunity to share as much as possible. So thank you. Thank you for
Oh
letting
my
me be on your
gosh.
show.
Robin, thank you so much. I mean, we'll have all your contact information in the notes for everybody to get a hold of you, but I just really want to acknowledge you and say thank you for your grace, your wisdom, your heart, and your willingness to share all these little tidbits and I love the word little and small and simple. Those seem to come up a lot in our talk today, and how that just those words alone can create some magic. So thank you so much for sharing your heart and your soul.
Thank you.
If this conversation sparks something for you, let it move through your week. Take it with you, take on one small action to move the ball forward. And if you want to join our community of leaders who are daring to lead with courage and heart, you can find that at www.elenaarmijo.com or www.thec-suitecollective.com. I reserve a small number of complimentary 20-minute sessions for leaders who want clarity on what they need and insight into what is getting in the way. The practical next steps that create real movement and results in your leadership journey. So you can schedule a call through the link below. It's in the description. Like, subscribe. Thank you for listening, for showing up, and for doing the work of being human together.